Hello friends, welcome to Yadnya Investment Academy. Myself CA Yogesh Katariya, and in today's video we are going to see the transactions by NRIs, OCIs and foreign nationals in Indian immovable properties. Friends, in today's scenario it is very common to be a NRI or OCI cardholder, and equally it is very common to have a properties or investments in India. Once we become NRI or OCI, we have attachment to our land and we invest in immovable properties in India. In today's video, we are going to see what all regulations are there regarding this and what all things we need to keep in mind while doing investment in the Indian immovable properties. So let's start with the video, friends. Friends, mainly the law governing these transactions is the FEMA Act, under which there are rules, regulations which governs the immovable property transactions in India by NRIs, OCIs or even the foreign nationals also. So FEMA law doesn't specify or doesn't give any definition about the immovable property. So the term as the immovable property says, it may include or it will include the residential property, the commercial property, which will include the shops or the offices, then the industrial properties, then the open plots, then agricultural land also, agricultural property, and then even the under construction property also. So if some property is under construction, that will also get covered under the immovable property. So the general meaning of the immovable property, we can take that to apply these provisions or to the FEMA law equally. So what is the restriction under the FEMA law regarding the immovable properties in India? Generally, these immovable property transactions are, not generally, the immovable property transactions are the capital account transactions under the FEMA law. There are two kinds of transaction, the current account transaction and the capital account transactions. The current account transactions are generally allowed or openly allowed unless and until it has been restricted. But the capital account transactions are generally prohibited. These transactions are not openly allowed unless and until it is specifically allowed. So transaction in immovable property is falling under capital account transaction. So what is capital account transaction and its definition? We are not going into that. But the capital account transaction, the immovable property transaction is falling under capital account transactions, and capital account transaction is prohibited unless and until it is been specifically allowed. It is been specifically allowed or permitted. Then what FEMA law says, the land in India or the immovable property in India is allowed openly only to the residents. Only to the residents, except certain exceptions. So certain exceptions means when the NRIs, OCIs or foreign nationals can buy these properties. So there are restrictions or there are leeways given to buy immovable property in India by NRIs and OCIs. OCIs and NRIs are allowed to buy immovable properties in India with certain restrictions. Firstly, immovable property transaction in India is capital account transaction by if it has been purchased by or dealt by NRI, OCI or foreign national. The capital account transaction are generally prohibited unless and until it is allowed. So the immovable property transaction by NRIs, OCIs are allowed with certain parameters, with certain limitations. So what are those limitations or restrictions? So firstly, the purchase based means purchase based restrictions covers agricultural land, means what all I cannot purchase in India. Being NRI or OCI, what I am not allowed to purchase in India? Firstly, agricultural land. Being NRI or OCI, I am not allowed to buy an agricultural land in India. A plantation property I cannot buy. A farmhouse in India I cannot buy. Many times we see for second home purpose, we buy an farmhouse plot and on that we build some farmhouse bungalow or farmhouse. Even the farmhouse land is also the agricultural land. So being NRI or OCI, whenever you are NRI or OCI, you are not allowed to buy all these properties, neither the agricultural land, nor the plantation property, nor the farmhouse in India. Certain restrictions are on the basis of investments. Investments in, so investment where we will do investment in certain company, proprietorship, private limited, LLPs. So in any form, investment in any form is not allowed in following companies who are dealing in the following sectors. Means the NRI OCI is not allowed to invest in such companies or such a firms who are dealing in the following transaction, or who are investing in the following transaction. Firstly, the real estate business. Secondly, the construction of farmhouse. And thirdly is trading in TDRs. TDRs is the FSIV, what we buy in open market to construct the for the construction purposes. So whoever company is dealing, or whoever is having business of dealing in all three businesses, in that businesses NRI OCI are not allowed to invest. So NRI OCI is not allowed to invest in real estate business, not allowed to invest in a business who is building a farmhouse even. So even buying a farmhouse is already banned. So a company who is building a farmhouse, or who is constructing a farmhouse, in that company also the NRI OCI is not allowed to invest. And thirdly, the company who is trading in TDRE, in that company also NRI OCI is not allowed. So what is real estate business has been mentioned. So what is not included in real estate business is the road development projects, the townships, the roads and bridges, the REITs are not the real estate business. Mainly they want to cover the any kind of trading in real estate. So if I am a broker who is dealing in the real estate, or I am purchasing and selling the real estate only for the trading purposes. So such kind of business are not allowed, and such kind of businesses are falling under real estate businesses. Third restriction is on the basis of citizenship. The FEMA law has defined the 11 countries whose citizens are not allowed to buy or invest in immovable property, any immovable property in India. So there are 11 countries whose citizens are not allowed to deal in any way, means neither the purchase nor the sale nor the gifting, nothing is allowed for those countries' citizens to deal in immovable properties in India. Which are those countries? The Pakistan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Afghanistan, China, Nepal, Bhutan, Macau, Hong Kong, and the Korea. So these are the 11 countries whose citizens are not allowed to directly deal in the Indian immovable properties. But if they want to deal in the immovable property in India, in that case, if they want to deal, they have to take a special purpose. Not allowed means it is not 100% or completely banned from everything. Means you have to go to the RBI and take the special approval from the government of India or RBI. You have to go to them and then take the special approval saying that I want to buy this property, and if they allow to buy that property, then only you are allowed to buy that property. At the same time, if the person is citizen of these 11 countries but he is holding the Indian OCI card, then these restrictions are not allowed or not for them, because OCI and NRIs are falling in the same category and they are allowed to deal in the immovable property barring certain restriction, investment based or purchase based restriction, which we have already seen. So these 11 country citizens are not allowed to deal with the Indian immovable property. Now we are going to see what are the nature of transaction which are generally happening in the immovable properties, and what are the restrictions or conditions for NRIs or OCIs to deal with these transactions. Firstly, the purchase or acquisition. We have categorized this in two ways. So purchase or acquisition of agricultural land, farmhouse and plantation property. This is one pool. And other than these three properties like commercial property, residential property, plot, NA plots or industrial property, shops, offices, under construction property, all are in the second bracket. So first bracket is agricultural land, farmhouse and plantation property. Second is other than these three, So we'll see one by one how the things go ahead with NRIs and OCIs. If I am dealing with agricultural land, farmhouse and plantation property, then who can buy? So NRIs and OCIs are not allowed to purchase these properties. Not allowed to purchase these properties. Which properties? Agricultural land, farmhouse and plantation property. If these three properties are there, NRIs and OCIs are not allowed to purchase these properties. What about the gifting? Can they receive the gift of these three properties? Agricultural land, farmhouse and plantation property, whether an NRI or OCI is allowed to take the gift of these three properties? No. NRIs and OCIs are not allowed to receive the gift of these kind of properties. Only person resident in India is allowed to take the gift of agricultural land, farmhouse and plantation property. This pool is separately treated by the FEMA. This pool is specifically regulated. So you will see the specific regulation for these three kind of properties. Then inheritance. What about the inheritance? I am not purchasing, I am not receiving as a gift being an NRI or OCI, but I got these three properties in the form of inheritance. Some my forefathers were there, and through their will or without will also, through their will or without will, I got the property after their demise. After their demise, I got the property by inheritance. So because it is not in my hand, so these kind of properties are FEMA specifically has allowed these kind of transactions in these three properties, three assets, the agricultural land, farmhouse and plantation, to receive by OCI and NRIs in the form of inheritance. So if an NRI or OCI is receiving these properties in the form of inheritance or because of inheritance, they are allowed to hold those property. Then what about the transfer or sale? I am owning that property. Say for example, I am a resident and I have agricultural land, farmhouse or the plantation property, whatever the property. So I have that property. After that I become NRI. So I am allowed to hold that property. The FEMA law specifically says that if I am owning a property before becoming NRI, then I can hold those properties. And secondly, if I am inheriting those properties, if I am inheriting agricultural land because of my forefathers and after their demise, I am inheriting those properties, then in that case, what about the selling? Buying is not allowed being NRI OCI, but what about because I am owning that property, what about the selling of those properties? So if I am going to sell that property being an NRI or OCI, sale is only allowed to person resident in India. So only Indian resident is I am allowed to sell only to Indian resident. I cannot go and sell to another NRI or OCI. I cannot sell Indian immovable property or even at least not all immovable property, only the agricultural land, farmhouse and plantation property to any other NRI or OCI or foreign national. I have to compulsorily sell these properties to person resident in India, means Indian resident only. I cannot transfer to NRI, OCI or foreign national. Because they are not allowed to purchase that. So even though I say that I want to sell to them, but in very first tranche we have seen that purchase or acquisition is not allowed for NRI OCI of these properties. This is one pool of the asset or immovable property. Another pool, except for the agricultural land, farmhouse and plantation property, we have other properties also. The commercial shops, flats, bungalow, open plots, which are NA plots, industrial plots, under construction property. What about those? Let's see what happens to these properties. So acquisition. So except for these three assets, I am allowed, being NRI and OCI, I am allowed to purchase any of these properties. Be it the shop, be it the office, be it the industrial plot, be it the plot, NA plot or under residential plot or bungalow, anything can be there. So all other immovable properties being NRI or OCI, I am allowed freely to buy because It has been specifically allowed. Being capital account transaction, it is not freely allowed, but with certain exceptions. Under that exception, it has been allowed that NRI OCI can purchase any other property except for the agricultural land, farmhouse and plantation property. Except for that, they are allowed to buy. They are allowed to buy. What about the gifting? Purchase and acquisition allowed. Gifting, gift from gift to NRI OCI, being NRI or OCI is allowed from any other person. Being NRI or OCI, I am allowed to receive the gift of other properties except for that pool. Allowed to accept that properties provided they are my relatives. They are my relatives. If the my father is gifting me a shop in Mumbai. So my father have a shop in Mumbai. He want to gift to me. He is allowed to gift because he is my relative. He is my relative. So being NRI or OCI, I am allowed to receive the gift of other properties except for the agricultural properties. I am allowed to receive the gift of pool 2 properties. We will say pool 2 properties as a gift. But who are the relatives? So for relatives definition, we have to go to the Companies Act, where it is they have given the definition of relatives. We are not going into that definition. But if I am falling in that definition, then only the gifting is allowed between the donor and donee if they are falling under the relative definition under Companies Act. What about the inheritance? Inheritance is allowed for the NRIs and OCI. Pool 2 properties can be very well received as in the form of inheritance, provided the properties which they have acquired under inheritance has been acquired as per FEMA regulations. As per FEMA regulations. Say, someone being I'm an NRI, I have acquired a property without complying with the FEMA law. Being NRI, I have acquired. Now, after me, it is getting passed on to my legal heirs who is also NRI. So he is allowed to inherit that property. Because it is coming through inheritance. But because I have not complied the FEMA law, his title may not be clear, or he may not be allowed to hold that property under FEMA regulations. Because to inherit that property, the property owner should have purchased that property or should have possessed that property as per the FEMA regulations. Anyways, if something has came illegal, it will not get clear title if it get passed on to another one. So the property should came through the FEMA compliance only. What about the sale? So NRIs and OCIs are allowed to sell these properties to anyone, to any person. So if I am owning a pool 2 property, then in that case I am allowed to sell to another NRI OCI. I am allowed to sell to resident also. So I am allowed to sell the pool 2 properties to another resident or even another NRIs and OCIs also. So whatever property I am owning, being NRI OCI of pool 2 properties, I can deal with anyone, either NRI OCI or the resident. Hope friends you are clear with the transactions, what all properties are allowed to NRIs and OCIs to hold, to get the gift, to gift also, to sell, to deal with. So with that things, now the next question will arise how the funds received from these transactions or the funds required to acquire these transactions, means these properties, how that will happen. This is our topic of next video. In that video, we are going to see how the property sale money can be repatriated outside India. What are the restrictions on those transactions? What all regulations governing those transactions? So repatriation related transaction, where I can credit those transactions, that we are going to see in next video. Hope friends you are clear with the terms or the concept regarding the investment in immovable property by NRIs and OCIs in India. Thank you for watching.